A man is lying face down in the Nevada dirt, 43 feet from the camera, with 118 degrees of August heat pressing down on the back of his neck. The camera has stopped rolling. The crew of 214 people, grips, wranglers, makeup artists, assistant directors, has gone absolutely silent. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of people who are watching something they don't know how to categorize yet. And in the center of that silence stands John Wayne. He is 6 feet 4 inches tall. He weighs 223 pounds on that particular afternoon because the wardrobe department has logged it. They log everything. He is wearing the same dirt-caked shirt he has worn for 11 consecutive shooting days. His hat is pushed back on his head. His hands are at his sides. He is not looking at the fallen man. He is looking at the director. Then at the studio representative standing 17 feet behind the director. Then back at the man on the ground. Then, and this is the part that nobody on that set ever forgot for the rest of their lives, he makes a decision. Not a dramatic decision. Not a speech. Not a gesture designed for anyone to see. A quiet, internal decision, the kind that costs something real. By the end of that afternoon, it will cost him exactly $2 million. This is that story. The year is 1968. The location is the Mojave Desert, 11 miles east of Kanab, Utah. Close enough to the Nevada border that the production accountants have been arguing for 3 weeks about which state's labor regulations apply. The production is a major studio western, budgeted at $7.4 million, which in 1968 dollars represents the kind of financial exposure that makes studio executives wake up at 3 a.m., reaching for antacids. The film is scheduled for a 44-day shoot. They are on day 31. They are 6 days behind schedule. Every lost day costs the studio between $42,000 and $68,000, depending on whether the second unit is working or idle. The studio representative on location, a man named Harlan Briggs, 38 years old, 14 years in the business, never once been on a horse in his life, has been sent specifically to ensure that the production does not fall further behind. Harlan Briggs is not a villain. Understand that clearly. He is a man who has built his entire professional reputation on the belief that film productions run like manufacturing plants. Inputs in, outputs out, waste eliminated. He holds an accounting degree from USC. He has produced 12 films in 14 years without a single budget overrun exceeding 4%. The studio trusts him absolutely. They trust him because he delivers. He delivers because he treats every problem, whether temperament, injury, grief, as a variable to be managed. He arrived on location on day 25, 6 days before this morning. In those 6 days, he has shortened 2 lunch breaks, eliminated 1 full travel day by pressuring the location manager to move the crew into accommodations 40 minutes closer to the shooting site. Accommodations that most of the crew have described privately as barely habitable, and twice pressured the first assistant director to cut safety rehearsal time on difficult shots in exchange for keeping the day on schedule. The crew dislikes him. They dislike him with the quiet, specific dislike that comes not from personality, but from principle. The sense that he does not understand what they do, does not care to understand it, and is applying a ledger sheet logic to work that is fundamentally physical, dangerous, and human. The stuntman's name is Roy Greer. Roy Greer is 41 years old. He has been working as a stunt performer since 1951, which means 17 years in a profession that has a documented casualty rate that the studios do not discuss publicly. He has performed falls from moving horses, fights on moving trains, sequences involving fire, sequences involving water, sequences involving vehicles moving at speeds that no reasonable person should be moving at. He has broken his collarbone twice, his left wrist once, 3 ribs in a single sequence on a production in 1962, and his right ankle in a way that required surgical reconstruction and 4 months of physical rehabilitation. He came back to work in 4 months and 1 week. He is not a large man, 5'9", 172 pounds, but he moves with the kind of precision that only comes from 17 years of training your body to fall correctly, to take impact correctly, to hit a mark at 30 miles an hour and make it look like 20. The other stunt performers on this production regard him with the specific respect that practitioners reserve for someone who has genuinely mastered a discipline. On this particular morning, Roy Greer has been working since 5:47 a.m. The sequence requires him to fall from a horse at a full gallop, hit the ground, roll, and come to a stop at a precise mark, 43 feet from the camera position. He has rehearsed the sequence 4 times at reduced speed with the wrangler, who is handling the horse. The horse, a bay quarter horse named Ace, 14 years old, 14 hands high, deeply experienced in production work, is cooperative but requires careful timing on the release. The shot itself takes 11 seconds of screen time. To get 11 seconds of screen time, Roy Greer hits the ground 7 times over the course of the morning. 7 times in 118-degree heat, with a body that has been absorbing impact since before some of the production assistants on this shoot were born. On the 7th take, and here is where it changes, something goes wrong that has nothing to do with technique or timing or the horse. Roy Greer's body simply stops. Not dramatically. Not with a cry. He completes the fall, completes the roll, reaches the mark, and then does not get up. The camera keeps rolling for 3 seconds because the camera operator, a veteran, named Dale Forsyth, cannot immediately distinguish between a man who has finished his mark and a man who has collapsed. Dale Forsyth will tell this story for the next 30 years, and every time he tells it, he describes those 3 seconds the same way. Like watching something shift from performance to reality and not knowing exactly when the line crossed. The first assistant director calls cut. The set goes silent, and 14 people move toward Roy Greer. Harlan Briggs is not among them. John Wayne has been on this production for 31 days. He has been awake since 4:30 in the morning, because that is what his call sheet demands, and because John Wayne does not treat call sheets as suggestions. He has been in makeup since 5 a.m. and on set since 6:15 a.m., which means he has been standing in 118-degree heat for approximately 3.5 hours by the time Roy Greer does not get up. He is not in the shot that requires the stunt. His scene comes after, a 2-page dialogue sequence that will be shot once the stunt unit has finished their work. He has been waiting, the way he has been waiting for 31 days, for his moment to do his job. He does not complain about waiting. This is worth noting. He is, at this moment, the most commercially successful film actor in the world. The box office receipts confirm it, the studio accountants confirm it, the audience surveys confirm it. He does not need to wait in 118-degree heat in Utah for anyone. He could, if he chose, send word through any of 3 assistants that he will be in his air-conditioned trailer when the crew is ready for him. He does not do that. He stands near the camera position, slightly apart from the crew, and watches. He watches Roy Greer's rehearsals. He watches the wrangler handle the horse. He watches the way Roy Greer adjusts his position in the saddle 3/4 of a second before the release. A tiny technical adjustment that most of the watching crew doesn't register at all. John Wayne registers it. He registers it because he has been working with stunt performers since 1930, which is 38 years, which means he has watched more stunt sequences than almost anyone alive in 1968. He understands what a prepared body looks like, and he understands what a depleted body looks like, and by the 5th take, something in the way Roy Greer is holding his shoulders, a very specific compression, a very specific reluctance, has caught his attention. He says nothing. He looks at the first assistant director. He looks at the director, a man named Carter Walsh, 52 years old, 20 years in features, 2 Academy Award nominations. He looks at Harlan Briggs, standing 17 feet behind Carter Walsh, holding a production schedule, checking his watch. He says nothing, but the wardrobe assistant standing 6 feet to his left will later describe it this way. You could feel him make a calculation. I don't know how else to say it. He wasn't fidgeting. He wasn't agitated. But something in him went very still, a different kind of still, and I knew whatever was going to happen next, he already knew what it was. Then Roy Greer doesn't get up from the 7th take. And John Wayne is already moving before anyone calls for a medic. He crosses the 43 feet of desert floor in 12 steps. Not running. Walking, but the kind of walking that has purpose behind it, the kind that parts a crowd of 14 people without requiring anyone to be asked to move. He kneels next to Roy Greer. He puts one hand on the stuntman's shoulder blade and says 2 words, not for the camera, not for the crew, just 2 words directly to Roy Greer. And Roy Greer opens his eyes. The production medic arrives 30 seconds later. Heat exhaustion, he confirms. Severe dehydration compounding physical fatigue. Roy Greer needs shade, fluids, and rest. Minimum 4 hours of rest, likely more. This is the moment Harlan Briggs walks forward. He walks forward with his production schedule in one hand and a radio in the other, and he says, in front of 214 people, that they have a stunt double for the stunt double. that there is a second performer on the call sheet who can complete the remaining shot coverage. That Roy Greer can be transported to the medic tent, and the shoot can continue within 20 minutes. That they are behind schedule, and every decision made on this location has a financial consequence, and the studio has been very clear about its expectations. He does not say any of this cruelly. He says it practically, efficiently, the way a man says something he has prepared himself to say. He is 47 seconds into his statement before Carter Walsh finds the words to respond. And in those 47 seconds, not one other person on that set speaks. John Wayne does not speak either. He is still kneeling next to Roy Greer. He has not looked up at Harlan Briggs. He is watching the medic work, checking pulse, beginning fluid administration, and his expression is what several crew members will later independently describe using the same word. Patient. Not angry. Not waiting for his turn. Patient, in the way that something very large is patient when it has already decided what it intends to do. Carter Walsh starts to say something about safety protocols and collective agreements. Harlan Briggs talks over him, gently, professionally, but clearly. He references a clause in the production agreement. He references the secondary performer's contract. He says the words schedule integrity twice in 4 sentences. And then John Wayne stands up. He stands up slowly, fully, until he is at his complete height. 6 feet 4 inches, 223 pounds, 11 days of desert dust on his clothes. And he looks at Harlan Briggs for the first time since the man started talking. He does not raise his voice. He does not step toward Briggs. He does not perform anything for the audience of 214 people who are all, now, completely still. He simply says, "We're not shooting anything else today." The silence that follows lasts 4 seconds. Not approximate. Dale Forsyth, who still has his watch on his wrist, will account for it specifically. 4 seconds, from Wayne's last word to the first sound from anyone else on the set. In film production terms, where the ambient noise of a working set never truly stops, 4 seconds of total quiet is remarkable enough to measure. In the first second, Harlan Briggs recalibrates. He is not a man who is accustomed to direct opposition, but he is also not a man who capitulates to it. He has been in 14 productions. He has managed temperamental directors. He has negotiated with studio heads. He has once talked a leading actress down from a complete walkout 40 minutes before her scene was scheduled. He is not intimidated by John Wayne's height or his stillness or his 38 years in the business. In the second, Briggs begins his response. His tone is measured. His argument is sound. The production agreement specifies conditions under which secondary performers may substitute. Roy Greer's injury, and heat exhaustion is an injury he acknowledges absolutely, triggers a standard substitution protocol. The secondary performer is trained, contracted, and present. Proceeding is not callous. Proceeding is contractually correct. In the second, John Wayne lets him finish. This is the part nobody expected. He does not interrupt. He does not talk over Briggs the way Briggs had talked over Carter Walsh. He lets the argument complete itself fully, in front of everyone. And there is something in the act of letting it complete that makes it smaller, somehow, than it seemed when it was being made. In the second, Wayne turns, not to Briggs, but to Carter Walsh. "Carter," he says, "tell me what you need to complete the story without that shot today." Carter Walsh blinks. He is a man who has been directing films for 20 years, and he has never, in 20 years, been asked that question in that way. Not can we get the shot, but what do you need to tell the story? There is a pause of exactly 2 seconds before he answers. Later, Carter Walsh will describe those 2 seconds as the moment he remembered why he became a director. Walsh says he can cut from the existing takes. He says take 4 has the angle he needs. He says he can make it work. Wayne nods once. He turns back to Briggs. "Roy goes to medical," he says. "The crew breaks for the rest of the day. We pick up tomorrow morning." Harlan Briggs does not raise his voice. Give him credit for that. He makes his position clear, clearly and professionally. If production halts for the remainder of the day, the cost will be significant. He will need to report the decision to the studio. He will need to document the reasoning. He will need Wayne's name attached to the decision as the originating authority, which means, and here Briggs chooses his words precisely, it means Wayne's production entity will bear accountability for the schedule variance. Wayne says, "Put my name on it." He says it the way he said, "We're not shooting anything else today." Without heat, without theater, without any apparent awareness that 214 people are recording this exchange in their memories with the fidelity of court stenographers. Then he turns to the wrangler nearest to him and asks about Ace, the horse. He asks whether Ace has had enough water this morning. He asks whether Ace is showing any signs of heat stress. He listens to the answer, nods, and says to make sure the horse gets an extra 30 minutes in the shade before the end of the day. It takes him 11 more seconds to complete the wrangler conversation. Then he walks toward Roy Greer, who is sitting up now, pale but conscious, and kneels again. Nobody on that set moves for what the medic will later estimate as somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. They do not move because they are watching John Wayne, who is not performing anything, who is simply sitting next to a man who fell down and making sure that man understands he does not have to get up until he is ready. The physical consequence is concrete and immediate. The second unit packs up. The camera crew begins breaking down the position. The 214 people on that set, grips, wranglers, makeup artists, assistant directors, production assistants who have never seen anything like this in their combined careers, disperse toward their vehicles and their trailers and their conversations, and every one of those conversations, in some form or another, is about the same thing. What they just saw was not a tantrum. It was not a display of star power deployed to win a personal argument. It was not theater. What they just saw was a man who decided, in the middle of a desert, in front of a studio representative with the authority to make his professional life genuinely difficult, that the principle was worth the price. Nobody on that set would fully be able to explain it that afternoon. But they all knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with logic, that the price was going to be real. By 6 o'clock that evening, the production is encamped at the crew accommodations. The ones Briggs had moved them into 40 minutes closer to the shooting site, barely habitable, and 2 conversations are happening in 2 different rooms. In the first room, Roy Greer is lying on a cot with an M4 in his arm and a rotating fan aimed at his face, and John Wayne is sitting in a metal folding chair beside him. Wayne has changed out of his costume. He is in his own clothes, a plain gray shirt, dark trousers, boots, and he is holding a cup of coffee that has gone cold while he was talking. He has been talking for 40 minutes. Not about the incident, not about Briggs or the schedule, or the $2 million that his production entity will absorb as the studio's penalty for the halted day. Plus, as it will turn out, a cascading set of overrun penalties triggered by the precedent the decision creates in the remaining days of the shoot. He has been talking about Roy Greer's fall, specifically about take 4. Wayne tells him that on take 4, the release from the saddle was the cleanest thing he had seen in 38 years of watching stunt performers work. That the way Roy had controlled the angle of impact, rotating 3 degrees left to protect the shoulder he had reconstructed in 1962, was not instinct. It was knowledge. It was knowledge earned in a way that most people never earn anything. And it showed in 11 seconds of film that most of the audience would watch without understanding what they were seeing. Roy Greer says that most people don't watch stunt performers. They watch what the stunt performer is serving. Wayne says, that's what makes it the harder craft. Roy Greer is quiet for a moment. Then he says he's been doing this for 17 years, and he has never had a principal stop a shoot for him. He has had principals acknowledge him on the street, thank him at rap parties, send bottles of whiskey to his trailer. He has never had one stand between him and a studio representative and say, in front of 214 people, that the schedule can wait. Wayne says, the schedule can always wait. A man can't. He says it without emphasis. Not as a philosophy, as a fact, the way you state a fact about geology or weather. And Roy Greer, lying on his cot with an M4 in his arm and the fan on his face, does not have a response to it for approximately 10 seconds. Then he says, that's going to cost you. Wayne says, already has. He says it with a half smile that Roy Greer will describe, 30 years later, as the most honest expression he ever saw on a man's face in the film industry. Not rueful, not resigned. The smile of a man who made a calculation and found the result acceptable. Roy Greer extends his right hand. Wayne takes it. They hold the grip for 3 seconds. Not the industry handshake, the contractual one, but the other kind. The kind where 2 people have understood something together that neither of them needs to articulate. In the second room, Harlan Briggs is on the telephone with the studio. He is explaining, in the precise language of a man who has spent 14 years building a reputation for precision, what happened. He explains the sequence of events. He explains Wayne's decision. He explains the financial consequence. The studio executive on the other end of the line, a man named Gerald Holt, who has signed Wayne's contracts for 6 years and understands exactly who he is dealing with, listens without interrupting. When Briggs finishes, Holt asks one question. Was Greer going to be okay? Briggs says yes. Holt says, then we absorb it. Briggs is silent for 4 seconds. He says, the precedent, Holt says, Harlan. Absorb it. The call ends. Harlan Briggs sits in a metal folding chair in a barely habitable room 40 minutes from the Mojave Desert shoot location, and he holds a cold telephone receiver, and he does something that only one other person ever witnesses. The production assistant who knocks on his door 17 minutes later with a sheaf of revised call sheets. What she later describes is not anger, not frustration, not the expression of a man who has lost a professional argument. She describes it as the face of a man doing arithmetic on something that doesn't have numbers. Years later, specifically 12 years later, in 1980, Harlan Briggs leaves studio accounting. He doesn't leave in disgrace. He doesn't leave in failure. He leaves with a resume that any production executive in Hollywood would recognize as distinguished. 26 films, 3 major studio relationships, a reputation for financial discipline that is referenced in industry trade publications as a benchmark. He leaves, by all external measures, at the top of his profession. He becomes a producer. Not an executive producer, a working producer on the floor, present at call time, involved in casting conversations and location decisions, and the specific, daily work of making a film happen around and through and despite the human beings who are making it. He is not, by most accounts, a different person. He is still precise. He is still financially rigorous. He still believes that a production is a system that must be managed. But he has one policy, instituted from his first independent production in 1981 and maintained through every subsequent project. No crew member with a documented medical situation continues to work that day. Full stop. Not negotiable. Not subject to schedule pressure or financial consequence. His first assistant directors know about this policy before they accept the job. His studio contacts know about it before they sign the deal. He explains it when asked in 11 words. I learned this in the desert from someone who knew better. He never says the name. The people who work with him, and who know the industry well enough to ask the right questions, eventually find the name on their own. The stunt performers on Briggs Productions notice the policy first. Stunt performers always notice the policies that affect them directly, because those policies are the difference between safety and the other thing. Word travels in that community the way it always travels. Specifically, accurately, person to person. By the mid-1980s, there are stunt performers who request Briggs Productions specifically because of a policy that traces back, through 12 years and one quiet decision in the Mojave Desert, to a man kneeling in the dirt next to someone who couldn't get up. Roy Greer retired from stunt work in 1979. His knees required it. He went into stunt coordination, the work of designing and supervising the sequences that he had spent 28 years performing. And he became, in that role, one of the most respected coordinators in the Western genre. He trained 43 stunt performers over the course of his coordinating career. Every one of them, at some point in their training, heard the same story. The Mojave, 1968, 118 degrees, 7 takes, and the principal who walked 43 feet across the desert floor before anyone called for a medic. He told the story not as biography. He told it as instruction. You will work on productions where the schedule is more important than you are. You will work on productions where the budget is more important than you are. And once in your career, if you are fortunate, you will work on a production where someone decides you are more important than both. He told them, when that happens, you remember it. And when you have the chance, you pay it forward. 43 stunt performers. Carry the math forward. The people each of them trained, the productions each of them worked, the decisions each of them made when someone went down and the schedule pressed. And you are looking at a lesson that has moved through the stunt community for more than 50 years, wearing the shape of a policy here, a training philosophy there, an unwritten rule in a dozen productions that the accountants never saw on the ledger. And that, finally, brings us back to the beginning, back to the frozen moment, back to the 118-degree heat and the 43 feet of Nevada dirt, and the 214 people who went completely still. Back to the question, what kind of man stops a $7 million production for a stuntman he is not contractually required to stop it for? Not a sentimental man. Not a political man. Not a man making a statement for the cameras or the trades or the industry. A man who looked at Roy Greer on the seventh take and saw, before anyone else saw it, that the body had given what it had to give. A man who understood because 38 years had taught him this, one bruise and one broken bone, and one 4:30 a.m. Call time at a time, that the work is the people, that the schedule is a tool the people use, that the moment the tool becomes more important than the people using it, you have made a mistake that no amount of money can correct. $2 million. That is the cost, precisely, of one man's decision in the Mojave Desert in August of 1968. $2 million for a halted afternoon, a cascade of overrun penalties, a principle maintained in front of 214 witnesses. John Wayne never discussed it publicly. He never cited it in interviews. He never mentioned Roy Greer by name in any recorded conversation. The incident appears in no biography published during his lifetime, in no studio memoir, in no trade publication from the period. It exists in the memories of 214 crew members, in the testimony of one retired stunt coordinator, in a policy that Harlan Briggs installed and maintained for 20 years without ever explaining its full origin. One decision, one afternoon, one lesson that the ledger never captured. And here is the question that nobody on that set ever answered to their complete satisfaction. Not the crew members, not Roy Greer, not Harlan Briggs in his chair with his cold telephone. In the 12 seconds between Wayne standing up and Wayne saying, "We're not shooting anything else today." In those 12 seconds, what did he see when he looked at Harlan Briggs? Not anger. Everyone agrees it wasn't anger. Somewhere, in a conversation that was never recorded, Roy Greer asked him directly. And what John Wayne said, and this is the part Roy Greer told every one of his 43 stunt performers, in exactly these words, was this: "I saw a man who hadn't learned yet what things are worth." One look, one sentence, one standard he refused to lower. But there was one decision John Wayne made on a film set that he did speak about, once privately, to a director who has never repeated it publicly. And what it cost him wasn't money. That story, that's for another time.